Talk to me a little bit about the angle that we do with Vince McMahon, where we're attempting to finish off the 2008 draft episode. It's June 23rd in San Antonio, and we're going to try to kill Vince McMahon. Now, we tried to do this in 2007 when we blew up his limo. We remember what happened afterwards and why we didn't continue that course. But after all this McMahon and the McMahon's Millions angles, we do this set collapse bit where the set falls on Vince McMahon, and we're going off the air noting that he's breathing, but that his legs can't move. And we know that nothing actually landed on him. It's story, but my goodness, another Vince McMahon death angle a year after the exploding limousine. Is this too much of the good stuff? What do you
I
remember?
hated it.
It seems really cheesy.
Just hated it. I just hated it. When you visualize things, when you talk about things, and you can visualize something, and you think, oh man, this is how it's going to be. This is going to be great. And then the practicality of trying to explain your vision to somebody else for them to actually make it a reality and make it happen. A lot gets lost in translation, and then just sheer execution and being safe and trying to do something. We tried something. I don't think it worked. I didn't think it was well executed, and I don't know. I just not a fan. Didn't really care for it.
It's written here, presumably the angle will be the build to pay off Who Tried to Kill Mr. McMahon, which is a spinoff, a parody, an homage, if you will, to Who Shot JR, which is a pretty big time TV show named Dallas back in the 80s. Is that the inspiration? We were going to do a Who Done It with Who Tried to Kill Vince McMahon?
Yeah, that's always been look, as far as cliffhangers in television. Yeah, that's a good one, man. Who Done It? And I think Who Shot JR was the epitome of cliffhangers, and then they shit the bed with their next season because they didn't know how to follow it up. And you get yourself into that all the time. It was kind of like Who Ran Over Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah.
And like, I did it for The Rock. I'm like, oh my God, this is horrible. This, fucking sucks. Yeah, you get yourself into something that you visualize and you do it, and then you go, okay, we're going to do this. Can't do it with that guy. Or things happen, man. Life just happens. And this particular one, I just thought was a really poor execution as far as what it was. And I didn't think it paid off.
Let's talk about a real life circumstance. The timing of you guys doing this comes off pretty bad if you're a hardcore wrestling fan who watches TNA, because you're at least familiar with the fact that they had behind the scenes a real tragedy happened at one of their Mississippi pay-per-views on June 8th. It was a fellow who worked with the cast and crew putting together the sets and all that, and he has a really tragic fall that results in his loss of life. And that happens on June 8th. And now we're paying this Vince McMahon. A set collapsed on him just a couple weeks later, like 15 days later. But I'd like to think by the time you guys had those wheels in motion, you had no idea that this had happened. When do you remember hearing about TNA's tragedy?
I honestly, I don't even remember hearing about it until maybe afterwards. But again, this had been in place for so long.
Right.
This was 2 months getting to this place. So it wasn't like, oh, hey, cool. Somebody died. Let's recreate that. Anybody that thinks that is a moron. Okay. Yes. And if you think that, if you wrote that, if you insinuated that, if you think that, you're a moron. This was in the works for months, before we actually did it. And in no way, shape, or form would we ever try to capitalize on such a tragedy as that. That's something I will never forget. In early 90s, I think we were in Bushkill, New York, and one of our lighting grids fell, and it it fell from one end and took out a lot of the audio equipment and everything. And thank God, there was only one person that was injured, and they were only injured. I say that because it's much better than obviously death. But that was such a tragedy to us that it was like, oh my gosh, this accident happened. So in no way would we ever want to make fun of something like that, or try to capitalize off of a tragedy like that. That's silly, and it's silly for anybody to suggest it.
Let's talk a little bit about the draft and how everything really gets shook up here. We see Triple H, who's the WWE champion. He's going to get moved to SmackDown. Batista is going to move over to Monday Night Raw. We're even going to flip-flop announcers. Jim Ross will join Mick Foley on SmackDown. Michael Cole is going to be going to Raw to work with Jerry Lawler. Other changes are Rey Mysterio moving from SmackDown, where he's been his entire WWE career, to now Monday Night Raw. Jeff Hardy's been a Raw lifer, and now he's moving to SmackDown. CM Punk is going to take his Money in the Bank briefcase to Raw. And, there's lots of moving and shaking here. And I know anytime this happened, we were really big on we don't want it to get out and we don't want it to leak. And that leads to hard feelings if the talent doesn't know that my travel schedule is about to change. Does anything in 2008 stand out as being noteworthy, or there's some sort of story involved that you recall?
No, I guess this one where JR got boo-boo face because he got moved and didn't know.
Yes.
That'd probably be the only one.
Yeah.
But nobody knew. And that's why Vince wanted. Vince wanted a genuine reaction. So everybody was told that you could be drafted, pay attention, react accordingly. If you're upset, be upset. You're upset that, oh shit, man, you realize I'm not going to be traveling with my buddies anymore, and this is going to disrupt my schedule. Be upset. If you're happy, like, yes, I got Fridays off now, whatever, then be happy. But it wasn't to get anybody. It wasn't to, hey, let's see whose schedule we can disrupt. It was what was best for business and to try and get genuine, real reactions.
I'm sure, though, that, there's going to be a lot of stress on the creative room and the creative folks in that room, because they're going to feel their phones are probably blowing up with guys who want to know, like, hey,
sure,
am I going here? Am I going there? Like, this is a time when I'm sure being in creative is very frustrating.
Yeah, and there were only a couple of us that knew. So while, the creative teams as a whole had a general idea, not everybody knew all the drafts. They didn't know all the draft picks and who was going where, and especially for significant names and things of that nature. There was, that was kept very, very tight to the vest, which is why it didn't get out.
It's written that when the whole idea of switching announcers was brought up, Vince was negative about the decision to move JR. And it's written, Kevin Dunn brought up what would Ross's reaction be if it wounded up being done. And that amused Vince to no end, and it was done. So it's written here that the whole thing that upset JR may have actually been a suggestion from Kevin Dunn. What do you make of that?
The reason it was done was to give Michael Cole more exposure on a different show, and to get Michael Cole working with King and get Michael Cole exposed to a bigger audience. Michael was still young in this and learning as well. So it was a chance to give Michael different experience on a different show to a different audience. And while the thought of JR overreacting and taking it personally and thinking that all of the last 6 months of everyone's lives involved in that centered around what his reaction was going to be that one night is preposterous and just simply not true. It was, here's this. Now, when you sit there and you go, okay, how's JR going to react? And you get a chuckle out of that, that's real life. But we got to chuckle out of other people, and their reactions as well. and thinking of, oh God, man, I don't want to hear from this guy, after this or whatever. But we did it to keep it close to the vest and to make it as real as it possibly could be. And I get it, JR probably felt that I should have known, and that, by God, I deserve to know because I do this. Okay. All that may be true, but the boss didn't want anybody to know, and that included you. No conspiracy, no plot or conspiracy for the last 6 months of let's get good old JR. That's ridiculous.